Welcome to the GAF1 Power Rankings, looking at the driver power rankings after every week's Grand Prix. 10 drivers will make these power ranking lists. They're not standings. They're just an effort to look at who's trending based on the most recent Grand Prix. Come with me as I run through this week's power rankings. 7 races are completed in the 2020 Formula One season. Let's take a look at my power rankings. I'm very excited to do these after every Grand Prix moving forward. Cut line. These are going to be drivers who just missed out on making my top 10 power ranking list. And this week we start off with McLaren driver Carlos Sainz Jr., who was seen at the Belgium Grand Prix shaking his head over some of Ferrari's performances, his future team. It did not start, kept him from starting at Spa last weekend, and that's probably the main reason why he didn't get into my top 10. Before that, he had a 6th in Spain, so he looked like he was gaining some momentum. That did not start, sets him back, and he just misses out in that 10th spot as a result. Also, just missing out, Sergio Perez, the Mexican driver with coronavirus, keeping him out of a Grand Prix, is the difference between him making into that top 10 or not. Misses out on some points, and misses out on some consistency while Nico Hülkenberg was driving that car. Coming in at number 10, Ferrari gets on the list with Charles Leclerc. So Charles Leclerc's got 2 podiums this year, and he has stayed pretty calm with all these situations going on at Ferrari. While we've seen all of the drama with Sebastian Vettel, where's he going to be next year, the ugly divorce, Charles Leclerc has been relatively quiet during all this. He's kind of kept his head down and just tried to stay consistent. With all their issues, the fact that he's got 2 podiums and 45 points so far on the season, for me, is very impressive. I think that he's probably a week or 2 away with the way Ferrari is going from dropping into that cut line and dropping out of the top 10. And like I said in my intro, every week that we get away from those 2 podiums, it's going to be harder for him to make this list. But right now, he's clinging on that 10th spot for me because he is still in the top of the driver standings right now based on those 2 podiums. And in a Ferrari this year, that's pretty impressive for me. Coming in at number 9, Alex Albon. Alex Albon has finished in the points 6 out of 7 races this season. All of the conversation at the beginning of the year has been about Alex Albon not being able to keep up with his teammate Max Verstappen. But when you actually take a look at the numbers, he's been pretty consistent in that number 2 ride at Red Bull. He's been finishing between 5th and 8th every single week. The big difference here and why he's in my top 10, and other power rankings I've seen have him as far down as 17th if you looked at the ESPN power rankings this week. Alex Albon had a great qualification at Spa, and I thought he ran pretty well. I think there was some opportunity for him to be a little bit more aggressive and maybe get in a 5th or 6th and maybe out-strategy Esteban Ocon, maybe even Daniel Ricciardo in that race. But he's been relatively consistent, running between 5th and 6th every single week, except for the week that Lewis Hamilton got into him. So Albon, for me, is still in the top 10. He's sitting on 48 points, so he's in the top 4 in points right now. So for me, Alex Albon, 9th place, not that bad. Obviously, if you're Red Bull, you want him way up these power rankings. If they care about my power rankings, that is, of course. But in general, in the driver standings, you kind of want him to be threatening the podium each week. But he's getting there, and for me, he's number 9. Coming in at number 8, Esteban Ocon. So Esteban Ocon, for me, 4 out of 7 races in the points. 5th at Spa, a really great weekend for Renault in general. I do have a note here that Renault did struggle in Spain, so that one did kind of count against them a little bit. But if you look at all the results leading into Spain and coming out of Spain at Spa, Renault has raced really well, and Esteban Ocon has definitely improved from the beginning of the season every single week. 26 points on the season. I've got him in 8th. Let's look at number 7. Number 7, Lando Norris. Lando Norris has cooled off a little bit for me from his rapid start to the season. McLaren in general has kind of cooled off from their really good start to the year. Renault's definitely catching up to them for that battle of the midfield. Whereas early in the season, it looked like McLaren might be threatening to, and they still are, finishing top 3. But I think it's going to be more of a battle the rest of this year. Lando Norris has finished in the points 6 out of 7 races so far. Has a podium, has a fastest lap, and is sitting on 45 points. Still having a fantastic season, but he's kind of been more towards that 7, 8, 9, 10 spots the last couple of weeks in that McLaren. I'd like to see him push closer to that top 5 status moving forward for him to move up my power rankings. The first shot I did at Power Rankings earlier this year, I had him in the top 5. He's definitely cooled off since then. I think 7th place is a pretty solid place to have Lando Norris. Coming in at number 6, one of my favorites this season, Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly has finished in the points 4 out of 7 races this season. Driver of the race at Spa. He's having a fantastic season since returning to AlphaTauri after all the drama that surrounded him last year. I think at this point, if he keeps this pace up, Pierre Gasly is going to totally have vindicated himself and proven his spot on a Formula One grid. And if things keep getting kind of close between these two drivers, we saw another opportunity for them to be battling out at Spa this week. As the season rolls on, if Pierre Gasly keeps impressing, maybe we see a switch at the end of the year and Gasly re-gets that spot. We'll find out. Right now, Red Bull is standing behind Albon, which they should do. But Pierre Gasly has been awesome this year and gets voted Driver of the Week this last week and continues his amazing season, sitting on 18 points. And at Spa, I also thought it was a really impressive run from his pit strategy that didn't really work out, and he still was able to race his way back up through that field better than Leclerc did. And, something that we didn't see from any other driver. So Pierre Gasly, number 6, he could maybe even be a little higher. But I think for me, 6th place is the perfect place to have Pierre, who's been awesome this year, and I've loved watching it. Coming in at number 5, Lance Stroll, who amazingly, his future is somewhat in doubt at Racing Point with the news about Sebastian Vettel. Sergio Perez has come out several times saying that his seat is safe for next year. So it leaves a huge question mark of what's happening with Lance Stroll, who's having, quietly, an amazing season right now at Racing Point. He has finished in the points 6 out of 7 races. Only one retirement to start the year, which was mechanical, not his fault. Every other week, he has been running inside of the points. And, more importantly, he's beat his teammate, whether it be Sergio Perez or Nico Hülkenberg for the 1 week, 5 out of 7 races this year. And one of those races that he didn't, he had a retirement. Sitting on 42 points, Lance Stroll, for me, is proving that he has a right to be on this Formula One grid. Whether you like him or hate him or not happy about the fact of how he's got his ride, Lance Stroll is running well in that car. He's finished 4th a couple times this year. He's been battling close to a podium. Racing Point, I think at this point, kind of disappointing they haven't had a podium this year. But if they were going to, so far it's been more likely it was going to be Lance Stroll over Sergio Perez or Nico Hülkenberg. Top 5 for me right now. He's been consistent every week. And if they can figure out their speed, their race pace in upcoming Grand Prix, no reason to think that he couldn't even move up further up this list. Coming at number 4, Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas currently sitting 3rd in the point standings, and that's why I do not have him in the top 3. Where's the logic in that? Well, the logic is he's got 1 win, 2 poles, and a fastest lap. And I do think over the last week, even though it was another Hamilton domination, I thought Valtteri did close the gap slightly on Lewis Hamilton. But there's some arguments to be made here that Valtteri Bottas has not been aggressive enough or good enough inside of that Mercedes to actually close that gap all the way to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has shown that he's a more talented driver week in and week out this season. And for Valtteri Bottas to be sitting in a Mercedes who are significantly faster than everyone else in the grid based on equipment alone, and he's not even second in the points. He's being beaten by Max Verstappen there. And for me, that's a knock against Valtteri Bottas. I do believe that Valtteri Bottas is a very talented driver who's earned his right to be in Formula One. He's very good. I'm actually a Valtteri Bottas fan. But when I look at what Lewis Hamilton's doing in that equipment and what Valtteri Bottas is doing, and seeing just that there is a difference between these two driver styles, and there's no doubt Lewis Hamilton outperforms him almost every week. Some of that might be mental, that Lewis Hamilton is kind of maybe in Valtteri Bottas' head a little bit, that Bottas feels he has to be perfect because he does. But regardless, he should be number 2 on this list. He should be number 2 or number 1 every single week at Grand Prix, and he's not. And I think Max Verstappen's put on enough pressure to Valtteri Bottas that he's faltered a little bit this season. Coming in at number 3, Daniel Ricciardo, number 3. Again, as I said in the intro to this video, the more recent weeks play a large role in where these drivers end up on my power rankings. Yeah, Renault did struggle at Spain. Daniel Ricciardo over the last 4 or 5 weeks has shown extremely good pace in practice, has qualified well, and has raced well. For He's finished P4 2 times, a fastest lap last week at Spa, his great qualification, and 33 points. But more importantly, Daniel Ricciardo has brought positivity to Renault right now. And when you look at 2 years ago with that team, when they lost they lost Red Bull to Honda, and some of the negativity that was surrounding Renault even 2 years ago, they were really struggling in the midfield. Last year, they didn't look all that impressive either. Daniel Ricciardo's speed and pace have a great positive attitude around that team. And think about how impressive that is, that Daniel Ricciardo has Renault looking fantastic right now, and he's a lame duck driver. He's moving on to McLaren next year, and yet that team still seems like they're 100% behind him and the results that he's bringing to the table. It'll definitely hurt with him leaving next year. Who knows what Fernando Alonso is going to bring to the table, but right now, Renault is flying high and really positive, and a lot of that has to do with Daniel Ricciardo's driving. So he's, for me, has been great. An awesome week at Spa. For me, he could have been driver of the week that race as well. Pierre Gasly was a great pick as well. But Ricciardo, third place, and that's just how I feel on it. Number 2, Max Verstappen. And if you saw the thumbnail of this video, obviously you did because you clicked on it. Max Verstappen, where is he going to fall? For me, there's an argument that Max Verstappen could be number 1. And then there's an argument of why I don't have him number 1. Verstappen has a win and 6 straight podiums, matching his all-time career high with podiums. And he's beat Mercedes 4 times this year. He's finished ahead of either Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas or both. When you think about how good Mercedes has been, the fact that Max Verstappen is such a talented driver, that he's taking Red Bull equipment that is really good, one of the best equipments in cars on the grid, but they're not as good as Mercedes. Red Bull will be the first one to tell you that. They're not as fast as Mercedes. And Verstappen's still finding a way to finish ahead of them. And he's sitting on 110 points, 3 ahead of a Mercedes driver and Valtteri Bottas. And with the way Mercedes has led the pack right now, there's no excuse for that, except that Max Verstappen is a fantastic driver and maybe the best driver in Formula One. He might be the best driver in the world when it comes to motorsport right now. No doubt he is number 2 for me. There is an argument that you could have him number 1. But here's my argument of why I don't, and why, of course, Lewis Hamilton is number 1 on my power rankings. Lewis Hamilton has won 5 times this year. He's had 5 poles, fastest lap, and on multiple occasions has led every single lap of the Grand Prix. He has been as far as 30 seconds ahead of second place at times. Lightning fast track record speeds at Spa. He's on rails right now, and this guy just doesn't make a mistake. And even when he faces adversity, like we saw at Silverstone and the tires tearing apart, that man still drove the hell out of that car and drove it to a win. There is no doubt that what he's doing right now in Formula One is the stuff of legends. Does Mercedes equipment play a large role in it? Of course. But Lewis Hamilton is also an amazing race car driver. And when you're getting these type of numbers, you cannot not have him at number 1. So 157 points. He's almost 50 points ahead of Max Verstappen, who's been amazing this year. And he is 50 points ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who's running the exact same equipment. Lewis Hamilton is the man to beat. What do you think of my top 10? What do you think of this format of power rankings? Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree in the comments below. And as always, if you like my content, please give me a like and subscribe. I really appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.